Good morning, Grinders. Welcome to the DFS pregame show here on RotoGrinders. I'm Jordan Cooper, a.k.a. Blender Ed, your buddy, Blender HD. You can find me there on Twitter. And this is the show, as you should know, that we go over yesterday's slate for a little bit. Take a little review ski of what sharp players did yesterday, focusing primarily on DFS strategy. There's a 15-game slate today. 15 games, all the teams, all at once. No split, nothing, no 6 o'clock game that's off the slate or whatever. It's a 30-team slate, which means whatever the chalk pitchers are or the chalk hitters are, right? You got a lot of choices to choose from. But it's Casual Friday, and you know what I do on Casual Friday? Pretty much the same way as I do on any of the other days of the week. Answer your question in the YouTube chat. I see you guys in there. Suki Singh, Don Montgomery, Brandon McNeil, Frederick Duke, Eric Johnson, Card Fan, Michael Dompier, Jeff Chambers, J10. Hit that thumbs up button. Hit the thummy thumbs. Give me apple juice. Keep it cold. Keep it cold. Still got the Kroger stuff. Still got the store brand apple juice. Got to save up. Got to save up for the brand name stuff. So hit those thumbs up buttons. If you're new here, hit the subscribe button. Hit the notification bell to know when we go live. We got a special showdown, NBA showdown show coming up at 1 o'clock Eastern live on the YouTube channel. That's with Chop and Andy Means going over the, I mean, there's one game tonight. So there you go. So what do you do during showdown, right? Be unique. If you're playing large field GPPs, just be crazy. Be nutso. Try to take down first place uniquely by yourself. Don't try to be duplicated 1,100 times. So that's what I would suggest. And then we got Grinders live later today. But yesterday, pitching wasn't all that great. I mean, we got Lynn and Darvish. Yeah, I mean, the pitching choices seemed good, but as long as you got around 40 points at pitcher on DraftKings, you were fine. And you could have gotten that in a multitude of ways, right? You didn't need Darvish. You didn't even need Lynn, really. I mean, he was the highest scoring pitcher, but you didn't need him. Like, if you played Disclafani and Eliza Hernandez and you paid up at bats or whatever, and you got, 38, 39 points, you were fine also, right? You could have gotten there even with Tyler Anderson's 11, depending on the bats that you played. Casey Mize got 18.75 against a little bit of chalky White Sox. Same for Justice Sheffield. He was less than 1% owned. So you could have gotten there multitude of different ways at pitcher yesterday on both sides, I guess. But we see here, I mean, sharper players. I mean, the pitching is going to be condensed usually. We see Moore went over SP2 on Tyler Anderson. I think it came in under projected owned. 15.6 on DraftKings. I think it was projected for like 20 to 25. I thought that was a deal, right? I mean, I played on FanDuel. I didn't play that much Anderson on FanDuel because you almost don't need to, right? I think I had him in like 4 lineups. I played primarily Lynn and Darvish. A little bit of Wainwright on FanDuel, but I mean, that didn't really get there either. But I don't think pitching didn't really make the slate yesterday. It was really about, getting the truthfully, it's about getting the right one-offs, less so than the stack, right? Yesterday, the Brewers were chalk. They had the highest team total, and they were pretty underpriced. So you have Yelich here, 21%, Wong, 17, Vogelback, 17, Avi Garcia, 14. Then it looks like the Royals were number 2. Right, because we have Kettle Marte up here, but I don't see where the other, the Diamondbacks, I guess so. 12 here, Ahmed 11, Escobar 11. So they were towards the top. But we got some Royals, Perez, Merrifield. I'm assuming Soler, Dozier. Yeah, so that on DraftKings, that was the. I mean, it's very similar on FanDuel as well. And you could see many of the sharper players just went under on Milwaukee, right? But it wasn't like super duper chalk. It was for an 8-game slate, having, the highest team total team not being much more than 20% owned, no hitter being more than 20% owned. It's not like overwhelmingly chalky. When you get down into the single digits pretty quickly here, but you see most sharper players, if there's gonna be chalk bats, they're going to be under on them for the most part. For the most part, you can see here, J.P. Crawford at shortstop. See, yesterday my top stacks in exposure on FanDuel was Seattle, Arizona, and who else? Who else did I? And Kansas City, and a little bit of Milwaukee. I still played, some of the chalk. It was primarily Seattle, and Arizona. Arizona was a little more owned than I thought on FanDuel. Kansas City was a little bit more owned than I thought on FanDuel also. Seattle wasn't. I knew that. But going through here, we could see that our own. I know I see him in the chat every so often. Hog Lawrence came in second on FanDuel. Look at this payout structure. This is ridiculous. This is worse than FanDuel's yesterday. 50,000 a first, 15,000 a second, 5,000 a third, fourth, 2,000, fifth, 1,000. Look at that difference. And look, the difference in points between fifth and third is less than a point. That's a difference of what? Of $4,500. Right? And then obviously, first almost seemed to deserve it. Look at the gap, 19-point gap. Okay, you deserve the 50,000. But Hog Lawrence here had a 5-man Seattle, 2 Milwaukee, the 2 home runs for Milwaukee, and Salvador Perez's double dong. And there you go. And obviously Fraley, he was kind of the key. You didn't need Walton. You didn't need anyone at second base. But there you go. Not that complicated. 5-2-1, right? Darvish, Lynn, you're done, right? Take a look at like E&J 300 underneath. Here's a 5-man San Francisco stack. Darvish, Lynn. You got Perez's double dong, Donaldson's double dong, and Avi's home run. Like, to me, I don't think any specific stack, like, I think you could have won with multiple stacks. It just mattered. Did you have Perez? Did you get Donaldson? Did you get those types of guys? We took a look at the winning lineup. Essentially it's Donaldson, Brian Reynolds, Fraley. This is kind of a mess of a lineup. Not a lineup I would have built, or many people would have built, because it's kind of just like a bunch of three-man Arizona, 2 Pittsburgh, and just we throw people in there, I guess. You got there, so that's all you needed. Take a look at Forsaken's top lineup. Darvish, DeSclafani, 5-man Arizona. So you got the Marte, you got Ahmed. Rojas is 0, but you didn't. Second base, did anyone get there at second base? Carson Kelly's home run. And then you got Josh Donaldson 1 off, Winker home run 1 off, Yelich home run 1 off. So really, yesterday was more of a slate of the 1-offs. You could have gotten there with. We go just through like Hog Lawrence, Seattle stack, San Francisco stack. Here's kind of it's 3-3. It's okay. That's kind of a mess. Look at this, and this is this kind of a mess also. Crafty Lefty, Seattle stack. Porky 78 is a mess. Typically these single bullets are just like, I'm just going to jam in a bunch of people. Well, this is kind of a 3-3. Okay, something there, right? Get the same thing. A couple of times. It's like the same lineup, but 3 different people. It's a little shady, I guess. 3 different usernames, same exact lineup, 1 entry. Just to Joe, whatever. Here's Minnesota 4-man with 2 Seattle, 2. So it's a 4-2-2. Okay. Maswar over here, Seattle 5-man. Fire Dog, Minnesota 5-man. Awesemo, who's, I guess he's running non-correlated lineups. He's been experimenting with some stuff. So he has 2 Arizona. Just a mess. But if you take a look at his lineups, like, he's still playing stat. He still has plenty of lineups that are stacks, but he plays sometimes some of these lineups where it's just like, I'm just trying to get as many home runs as possible. I'm not sure if that's optimal. That's game theory optimal. I know he's been experimenting with that type of stuff. Seattle 5-man here. RBX Giants 5-man. So you could have gotten there with a couple of stacks. Just a matter of do you have one of the double? Do you have a double dong somewhere? Do you have Perez? Do you have Donaldson? Do you have enough home runs? Do you have Yelich and Garcia? Do you have, whatever? Do you have Carson Kelly catcher? If not Perez. And do you have two pitchers that put up close to 40 points? You could have gotten there. That's why I take a look. I look at okay, I was high on Seattle, so I'm looking for the Seattle guys. Kyle Seager. But look, I pulled up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, whatever. Sharp players, right? That came in towards the top or whatever. Over on Seattle. JP Crawford, over. Tyler O'Neill, which I had a ton of, over. Let's see. Mitch Haniger, right? So over, right? 9% owned, and pretty much a lot of Seattle. I also had a bunch of Pittsburgh with Polanco. Okay, so we have a bunch of that. Look down here, right? Kelenic, Starling Marte for the Mariners. Well, it looks like Ending played a bunch of Marlins. Marlins would have been a much better play if Tyler Anderson was more owned. If he was owned as projected, they would have projected. They would have been better. But this is what I look for. This is what I do in the morning. This is what you should be doing in the morning. Look through results DB. Download some CSVs if you want. You do it yourself. Throw it in Excel. Do whatever you want with it. Just seeing, how did sharper players build their lineups? Right? You could look for individual lineups. So I just look through this and I go, okay. When this is DraftKings. So, I played on FanDuel last night, so this doesn't necessarily help me specifically. If you're playing on DraftKings, it definitely does. Looking through the YouTube chat. It's Casual Friday. Post whatever you want. Doesn't matter. Not whatever you want. Devin's in the chat censoring stuff out, so not necessarily whatever you want. Lucas Yanetsko asks, starting with a small roll like $400, is it worth it to try to play cash games or just play tournaments? I wouldn't even play cash games at all with that small amount of money. It's going to take you forever to build. You got to get a minimum wage job. That would be more beneficial, time and resources wise. And plus, $400 is not really a bankroll. So if you lose the $400, you never play DFS ever again? No, you're going to put more money in. So typically, people that play DFS aren't playing with their if this goes away, I can't pay my rent. They're playing with disposable enough income. J10 asks, Blender, my cash lineup, pretty chalky except for two positions, would have cashed in second place on a single entry 121 contest. Any merit in playing your cash lineup in single entries? You could throw it in if you want, but for the most part, yes. Yesterday, if cash lineups did better than GPP lineups, the chalk got there, right? If you played Yelich, if you played Garcia, if you played Sal Perez, if you played Josh Donaldson, they were chalky in most contests. Darvish Lynn combination, yeah, you got there on this specific slate, but most slates it's not going to be that way. I throw my cash lineup in some smaller entry, small field GPPs as a portion because if I'm playing $800 worth of volume on a specific site, maybe $30 of it is in, I put it not even $30, $20. I put it in a $5 single entry or something smaller, like 300 people, like that type of stuff. Or you put it in like a quintuple up or a booster. You throw it in just in case, it gets up there, right? But only a small portion of it. It's like a little bonus. Out of the $800 of cash volume, like 700 of it is in head-to-heads and double-ups and 50-50s. The last 100 is like trips, $50 in triple ups, right? $25 in quintuple ups, $5 booster and like whatever, $20 in the home plate, whatever, got 3 max contests, and there they go. Get a little boost if your uncorrelated lineup. I'm more likely to throw it into a single entry GPP if my cash lineup is more correlated. If it ends up being that, like obviously one team is underpriced or something like that, and I'm playing a lineup on DraftKings that's 4-3-1 or 5-2-1 or 5 something. There's some type of stack in there. Okay, then that's a lineup that has correlated ceiling. Same for FanDuel, right? If I end up with 4 guys from the same team or something in my cash lineup, okay, then I'm more likely. It's still a chalk ass lineup that has no leverage, a little limited leverage, but whatever. And also other people, if you're playing like projected optimals, I mean, a lot of times you're tied anyway, right? So it's negative EV to begin with, right? Oh, yes, you came in first, tied with 17 other people. Then what was the point of that? It's not something I would prioritize. Let's see. Jacob Calloway says Osimo is using correlation coefficient to build stacks instead of using the blunt stacks tool. Very similar to Whistles this year. No, Whistles still stacks though, primarily. But yes, I know exactly what he's doing. He's not taking he's using correlation coefficient as a variable in his lineup construction as a whole of the whole lineup versus the projection, and sometimes it's 2 people, 3 people, like it's not, you're not forcing in stacks, you're just going by a strict correlation coefficient, like I need to get at least this much correlation versus projection, and then whatever it is. So sometimes it could be 3, 2, 1, 1, 1, 1. It could be whatever. He's experimenting with that. Whistles goes woo stacks more than that. So whatever his formula, whatever he's doing for correlation coefficients, measuring correlation of a single lineup, using obviously the difference between the batters, he has a much higher threshold. David Evans, guys, I'm new to MLB DFS. I usually play NBA, NFL, and NASCAR. Any advice or good rule of thumb for a new guy? To listen to the show and watch the show every day. I mean, that's the best way I could put it. If you're playing GPPs, stack, aim for first. I mean, DFS is the same regardless of sport. So the good rule of thumb is to play DFS well. Let's see what else in the chat. Eric Johnson, hey Blender, how's that FanDuel treating you lately? Do you play on DK as well? Yeah, I play cash on DK. I typically only play GPPs on one site on a specific day. It's hard to play on 2 sites at once with 100 plus lineups. DK's main GPP is $18 entry. Okay, so for me to play 100 lineups, that's $1,800. The payout structure is a little bit better, but not much better than FanDuel's. Like FanDuel sucks. DK sucks, but just slightly less. Yesterday it was horrible. 50, 15, 10, but that was horrible. But normally it's like 50, 25, 15, 10. I mean, it's still ridiculous. But on FanDuel, their main GPP is a larger contest, but a lower entry fee. So it's $5.55 an entry. So I could play 150 entries for $832.50, right? Versus playing, if I was to play $832 worth of volume on GPP entries on DraftKings, that would be 46 lineups, which I could do, that's what I would do. I would be playing 50 lineups. I would play 50 or 60 lineups on DraftKings versus playing 150 on FanDuel. Yes, and yes, it's a smaller field, so the large field is still small. 18,000 entries instead of like 28,000 entries, whatever it is. And obviously, a smaller, FanDuel, it's like 25 or 30K to first. On DraftKings, it's 50K to first. But I care more about. I'm going to come in the top 10. I'm just aiming for the top 10. Whatever happens, happens. So I choose on the normal slates where where it looks like that on DraftKings, I play on FanDuel. But then DraftKings also has sometimes it goes down to $12 or $8, right? Sometimes the payout is flatter. I don't mind $18 an entry if the payout structure at the top is flatter. So then I'll play on DraftKings that day. If anything, I'll play DraftKings more for the single entry and 3-max type of contests. Like I think they're better than the FanDuel ones from a payout structure. But like the 121, the single entry battery, whatever they call it, like that's a flatter payout structure. Or even like the $66 multi-entry was flatter. The $100 single entry, the single entry stuff is I like the payout structures on DraftKings better. So if anything, I'll play MME 150 entries on FanDuel and then build like 3 single entry, GPP lineups on DraftKings. Do something like that. That's primarily because of risk aversion because of the payout structure. Let's see. Doug Montgomery, such a huge slate. I play mostly FanDuel, single entries and 3 to 100. Is 4-4 the way to go with huge slates such as this? How does the slate need to be the start go for? Okay, whatever this question is, you're not thinking of DFS properly. Okay, every lineup is independent. Okay, someone here is new, right? They wanted tips or whatever. You have to stop thinking of these types of questions. Any question that has an exact answer is a bad question. A 4-4 with, let's say on today's slate, I'm making this up. Okay, I've not looked at the slate. I'm just pulling teams out just to show you an example. Okay, let's go to the starting lineups page. Just whatever. Let's pick 2 teams. Doesn't matter what they are. The Twins and the Rockies. Okay, build a 4-4 lineup with the Twins and the Rockies. Build a 4-3-1 lineup with the Twins and the Rockies. Build a 4-2-2 lineup with the Twins and the Rockies. Build a 3-3-1-1 lineup with the Twins and the Rockies. Build a 3-2-1. Keep on going. You build whatever constructions you want. The ownership and the projection of those lineups and obviously the correlation effects of each lineup will be different. Okay? So that you have to treat them independently of one another. So while a 4-4 may make more sense in one way, it may not make sense in another way. There may be a better 4-2-2 lineup you could play than a 4-4 lineup you could play, right? Depends on what pitcher is up there. So you can't think in terms of, well, no, this is the construction and I just have to fit everything within there. I'm going to play 4-3-1 and then play this guy as a one-off. It's like, well, have you thought about playing just not a 4-man stack of that team? How about a 3? What is that? Was that ownership? Instead of playing the 4th guy in the stack, instead of playing Starlin Castro at second base in your national stack, you're playing a high price. You're playing Jose Altuve or whatever. And that makes the lineup project better. And Altuve is low owned. But you lose the correlation of, but you lost the correlation between the other 3 guys in your lineup, but you raised your projection and you lowered your ownership. So yes, the correlation is less, but you made that up with projection and leverage. Remember, there are 3 levers to DFS: projection, lever 1, correlation, lever 2. And if I had a third hand, it'd be leverage, ownership. Correlation is when one thing happens, another thing happens. It increases the variance of your lineup. And projection is, the median, whatever, all the variables that goes into the sport. Then you're like, okay, if we played this slate out a million times, these are the range of outcomes that would happen. So you want higher versions of it, obviously better hitters at lower prices. So if you go high in cash games, you're pretty much you're taking the projection lever and you're just jamming it. You're just like, I don't care about correlation, care about nothing. Just give me the top projected line. Right? Or one of the top projected. Differences of something points probably doesn't matter that much. But give me the top. I don't care about anything else. Because you don't have to come in first in double ups. Right? You're just trying to get over the line. And then once you get into progressive payout tournaments, then you're looking to increase your variance. You're looking to get up there. How do I get to first place? Well, you can't just go all projection because then you're going to be playing the chalkiest lineup probably possible. So you're not going to get any correlation and any leverage. So it's like, okay, now I have to start lowering my projection and gaining correlation. But now I have no, and then you're playing the chalk stuff. So now you have no leverage. So it's like, well, I'm going to raise my leverage lever, right? And as you raise the correlation and leverage, your projection is going to start getting a little bit lower. In a perfect world, you'd love to get more leverage and play just a different guy and have the same projection. But typically, the field isn't that dumb, right? Oh, I'm going to play a higher projected guy that's lower owned. I mean, I guess you can try to find those situations. So when you take a look at a lineup, when you're structuring it, like you're talking about 4-4, 4-3, those are all part of the correlation lever, right? They're just notches on the lever, right? They have nothing to do with projection or leverage. You're just not what type of correlation. More 4-4 would obviously be way more correlation than 4-3-1. Then we're talking about FanDuel. Then 4-2-2, right? Then 4-2-1-1, right? We keep on going down. But let's say you go down to this level of correlation, but you're getting way more projection and leverage, even though you're not as correlated. That could be equal to a 4-4 lineup that has less leverage and less projection because you got maximum correlation. So you can't think in terms of, well, on this size slate, you have to play this type of, and that's it. That's the best. If you play anything other than 4-4, you're stupid. Like, no, lineups are made independently of one another. They all have those three different variables are going to be different for every lineup. Yeah, this lineup isn't high leverage, but it's highly projected. It's not the highest leverage, right? You're not playing like your cash lineup. When people say, "Oh, I'm going to fade the chalk stack and the chalk one-off and the chalk pitcher," like you don't have to do all three in one lineup, right? You don't have to. You can play a chalk one-off and a contrarian stack. Okay. That projection, leverage, correlation levers, do they end up getting to a point where your lineup is okay? Well, that lineup could be equal to a lineup that is completely correlated and leveraged completely different way. So yesterday, you could have played a Lynn Darvish lineup with the Seattle stack that had the same expected value as a chalk Milwaukee stack with DeSclafani and Elizer Hernandez. And then from a mathematical perspective, they'd be the same lineup. Mathematically, possibly. I mean, I'm just ballparking. It's like, oh yeah, well, you played the highest projected stack. That's also chalky. But how did you gain leverage? By changing the pitches. And you look at the projection. The projection is lower, but the leverage is higher. And the correlation is high because you're still playing like a 5-man Milwaukee with a 3-man Giant stack or something. But the EV of that lineup could be similar, close to equal to a lineup that on DraftKings could be a 3-3-2 lineup with, Darvish and Tyler Anderson, right? I mean, and a one-off Nelson Cruz or a one-off Yelich or something like that. If you ran out a simulation of the slate 10,000 times, you find that the ROI of both lineups are the same. Now, they both can't win at the same time, obviously. But you can see that the expected value is similar. So which lineup is better? Neither. Well, one lineup is 3-3-2 and one lineup is 5-2-1. And one lineup is 4. So you can make 4-4. Go ahead. Make 4-4 lineups of the Pirate on FanDuel of the Pirates and the Orioles today. You're going to be leaving 3,000 on the table. It's quite possible that lineup just is so poorly projected that, yes, you're right. It's 4-4. But your correlation of the 4-4 is not, and yeah, they'll be lower owned, but you're going to have to make up 25 points in projection. Possible. I mean, who knows? But it's a 4-4, so that doesn't matter. I'd rather play a 4-2-2 lineup with one of the bats with bats from Coors and a chalk pitcher. No, but that's too high owned. Well, not if I'm playing. My 4-2-2 has two-man Rangers that are 1% owned. I play Joey Gallo and Adolis Garcia I play overpriced Garcia at 1% owned and Gallo at 1% owned on FanDuel as part of my 4-2-2. Well, there you go. You're done. Play the chalk Rockies and the chalk pitcher, and that lineup could quite likely, most likely, have a higher expected value, have a higher ROI than a 4-4 lineup with just two random teams. So you can't think in terms of what's the correct answer. On a 15-game slate, there were billions of combinations. Billions. Your goal is to have higher EV combinations than your opponents. That's it. On this specific slate, there could be tens of thousands of plus EV lineups. Tens of thousands, if not more. Hundreds of thousands of plus EV lineups in comparison to your opponents. So you're going to play 20 of them. So build plus EV lineups. One could be a 4-4 of two, whatever two teams. One could be a 4-2-2. One could be a 4-3-1. One could be a 3-3, whatever. One could be all one-offs. You have no correlation there. Now, when people build lineups, a lot of times they stick to certain constructions because it just makes it easier to build those lineups. I'm telling you from experience, it's hard on FanDuel to go and it's hard on DraftKings. It's a little bit easier on FanDuel because max you could stack is 4. But it's hard on DraftKings to go, I'm going to play some 5-3s, some 5-1-1s. I'm going to play some 4-3s. I'm going to play some 4. It's hard to build like that. I'm going to build, 6 different type of constructions. You go here, we go to DraftKings MLB. Like if you're building 150 lineups, it's really tough to I want all of these, I want this, I want that, I want some 3-3s. I mean, and then put percentages and hope that it comes out the way it should. It normally doesn't. You're trying to do way too much at once. If anything, you build the 5-mans at once. You go, I want 40 lineups like this, and then you say, I want 40 lineups like that, and then you put them together, whatever. It's very hard to do that all in one build. So a lot of sharp players just run a bunch of lineups through and see what combinations end up being more of. I guess there's more 5. I guess I can make a lot more 5-3s than I thought I could make. So I'm going to make all 5-3s, or I'm going to make all 5-X's, or I'm going to make all 4-3s. It's easier. It's just easier to build that way. Yes, there are potential lineups that are not in those that are. I'm building 4-3-1s like on FanDuel. A lot of times, all 150 of my lineups are 4-3-1s. All of them. Not because I don't like 4-4s. I love 4-4s. Just hard to build them all at once. They're going to be 4-4 lineups that I could build. And yes, I could do I could play 20% of that and 80% of that. Sometimes I do that. When I need to make sure that there are 4-4 combinations that I do want. But if I see the predominant amount of combinations that I want are 4-3, I just say screw it. Just give me all 4-3. It makes it so much easier to build 150 to put everything in and set exposures and everything for 150 lineups by doing only one construction type. Maybe it's 4-2 on a smaller slate. Maybe I'm just going to do all 4-2. Not because I chose that beforehand. I ran lineups and saw what tends to come together more often. How many more lineups is that compared to others? What types of stacks, right? I'm going to play an expensive stack with a cheap stack. What ends up coming together more often? I see a lot of 5-3 Tigers because it needs a 3-man Tigers in order to give me the 5-man expensive stack. So I'm like, okay. So if I'm going to play 5-3 lineups, I know I'm going to need some type of cheap team. Tigers, Pirates, Marlins, something like that. But if I don't want to play those teams, then I can't build those lineups. So you have to decide that beforehand. But I'm not going off by what's the what's the correct answer? There is no correct answer. Mathematically, the optimal lineup, meaning the lineup that is scores the most points possible on a slate, is going to be like mostly one-offs. Now that optimal, you're not going to need that optimal lineup. You just have to beat the opponents in the GPP. The optimal lineup in the optimal, meaning the highest possible points that you could fit in for that salary. A lot of times in MLB is like 40, 50 points higher than the GPP winning score. Sometimes even more than that. The eighth hitter that hit 2 home runs in some random game that's 0.7% owned. And then the 2 home run guy that's 2.8% owned at some other position. I mean, how are you putting together those lineups? It's almost impossible to get to. If you want to smash your keyboard and try for the best, you can, but you don't need those lineups. You just need to beat your opponents. So it's more beneficial to increase your variance. Your goal is not to get the optimal, highest possible score lineup, just to beat however many opponents in your contest. It's easier to just increase your variance just linearly by stacking 2 teams, right? Those teams do well, most likely you'll get towards the top. Matt Mears asks, as I have to scroll back. Scroll back. How do I determine if a contest is worth entering based on the payout structure? Well, it depends on what your risk tolerance is. I play professionally. I maximize more for stability than for, the most EV, right? If DraftKings ran winner take all contests, the sharper players would still be the best and most profitable. Just everyone would go broke in the time being in between the times that you win. You need bankroll sizes that are enormous to survive that. And because I focus more towards not maximizing the most amount of money that I could possibly win, no matter what the risk is, my risk tolerance level is much lower. Doesn't mean I'm talking about from a contest selection standpoint, not and a volume standpoint, not a building the lineup standpoint. Once I'm in the contest, I build plenty of crazy lineups. But I'd rather play contests that are flatter at the top between 1st and 10th place. Those top 10 spots. Because the difference between 10th and 1st in a large field GPP is I can't control that. It's a double. That's that's subject to so much variance that the skill in coming in 10th and the skill in coming in 1st is no different. Just get your lineups towards in that zone. Just get it in that zone and just play off long enough and often enough that you get as many of them in that zone as possible. So obviously, if I want to get them in the zone, I'd rather get paid more for that zone rather than first place. So like at this payout structure here for the bat flip is horrible. Look, you're looking to get in the zone, right? Top 10. Oh, top 10 out of 90, almost 10,000 entries. $300. Like, dude, if I played 150 lineups into this contest, that's $2,700. Like, I'd need to come in like, obviously you have multiple lineups in there, so you don't need just one line. You'd have to come in like 4th place just to break even on one lineup. Like, that's stupid. That's ridiculous. 50,000, 15, 5, 2, 1. I'd much rather see this be 20,000, 15, 10, 7,500, 5,000, 3,000, 2,000, 1,000. So these spots that are like 5th to 10th pay way more than they currently do here. Yeah, first place is 25,000 or 20,000 and not 50,000. But if I get in this zone, and then even like 15th place is not 200, it's more like 500. So I get rewarded more for getting, lineups in this, top 10, top 20 zone, that I could do that often enough that I'm not I'm not losing as much money not binking along the way. Look on FanDuel this year. This year, I mean, look, the other day I had a 6th and 7th place. Then the day before I had 2nd place. And before that, I had like 7 other top 10 finishes, but not in the top 5. I had like 8th, 10th, 9th, 6th. And you look, and it's like I'm like barely treading water in GPPs with 10 plus top 10 finishes. 1 second, that 2nd place got me. Now I'm profitable. Not much, but I'm over the line. So it shows you how much importance there is in aiming for first. But along the way in aiming for first, I wanted, if the payout structure was flatter up top, I wouldn't mind 10 top 10 finishes. I'd be pretty profitable. So that's what I'm looking for. I don't need 100,000 a first and 20,000 a second. And then by the time you get to 10th place, it's $300. Like that, it's unsustainable. Like if you're not binking, you're losing money. That's why do you think I don't play the Millie Maker usually in NFL? Very similar. So I care more about this. I don't care about the min cash. Do not care at all about the min cash line. I'd rather them move the min cash line up, if anything. Why are you paying out 24% of the field? Pay 16%, pay 15 or 16% of the field, and then condense and make it be worth it. So it's not first place or nothing. Give all that money at the bottom and just add them to 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, all the way through whatever 50th place. That would be much better. So that's what I look for. Michael Dompier asked about last night. Beginning of the day, I heard people touting playing Canning and that Seattle was a poor stack. By luck, it seems like people moved to Seattle stacks. Was Seattle overowned? No, they weren't overowned. They were definitely not overowned on FanDuel. They were like 5% on FanDuel. They were a little bit higher owned on DraftKings, I guess, than what were projected. But I don't know. I was playing primarily on FanDuel. Let's see. Woo J Train asks, is Slate IQ your primary driver in deciding which stacks to target purely based on leverage? I'm wondering if I'm putting too much stock in leverage lately. Might just be a bad run. Remember, I'm going to go over it again. People are overcomplicating this. There are 3 levers of DFS: projection, correlation, and leverage. Let's say you jam that leverage lever all the way up. That's just as bad as jamming the projection lever all the way up, right? Playing your cash lineup in a large field GPP. Yes, I'm going to play the most leverage lineup that has such a low probability of hitting that it's negative EV as it is. Yes. If all your 1% owned players get there, I guess, but they're 1% for a reason, because their projection is low, right? Their chance of ceiling is low. So you can't just go by leverage. You need to go by the full lineup that you're playing. You don't need all the leverage, just like you don't need all the projection, just like you don't need all the correlation. You just need the balance of the 3. Right? Compared to the size of the contest that you're playing and the people that you're playing against. That's why if you're playing a 300-man contest, right, a small field GPP, should you be playing a lineup that is like 20 points lower projected than everyone else's? No. You don't need that much leverage. You don't need that. It's unnecessary. You're putting yourself with negative EV against your opponents. You need a touch of leverage. That's it. To beat 300 people. Now to beat 30,000 people, you need a lot more. Beat 300,000 people, right? Now we're starting to, and even then, even with 300,000 people, you don't have to play, I'm going to play 2 1% owned stacks and 2 1% owned pitchers. You still don't even need that. That's still over. That's still too much. Right? So you look at something like Slate IQ, which is just for DK, which is just a simulation, remember. And it's a simulation based on the RG plate IQ projections and ownership projections. So remember, if the plate IQ projections are off and the ownership is off, like those numbers don't even mean anything anymore. Oh, we project this team's going to be 15% owned, and they end up being 8% owned. Well, then the whole thing is that all the numbers are going to be different, right? So it's all privy on how accurate the information that's going into it is. And then when you look and you see the leverage percentage wise, like, okay, a team has a 0.3% chance of being the top stack, and they're only going to be 0.1% owned. That's 200% difference. Wow, they would be right at the top of the list. The teams with the most leverage. They have a 0.3% chance, and they're only going to be owned 0.1%. Yeah, but they're still the lowest at the point. It's only still 0.3% chance. They're still the lowest. They could be the 30th team on 30 slate. We look at this slate. The lowest team chances of being in the winning lineup. The 30th best team, the 30th, the lowest, could have the most amount of leverage in comparison just from a proportional perspective. That doesn't mean you play them, right? I mean, I guess you can take a shot in the lineup if you want, but maybe there's a team that has a 3% chance of being in the winning lineup that is only going to be owned 2.7%. Well, the difference between 3 and 3.0 and 2.7 is not that drastic. It's still positive leverage, but it's not 200% leverage. Yeah, but the chances of of that team winning in the winning lineup versus the 0.3% owned team is 10 times more likely, right? 3% versus 0.3%. So yeah, not as much leverage, but how much leverage do you need? You don't need all that much. So playing the 3% owned team may be way better than playing the team that's literally the least likely to be in the winning lineup, even though they're going to be they have more of a chance than they'll be owned. Because that's what you're trying to do. Play players, play teams, play lineups that have more of a probability of winning than what they'll be owned. But how many people are you playing against? That 0.3% owned team, that 0.3% chance team that only is going to be 0.1% owned, maybe that 5-man stack type of lineup is good for contests where there's about, 4.5, 5 million entries. So if you're playing in that type of contest, are those no, there aren't contests with that many entries in it. But if you're trying to beat 5 million people, maybe then it's worth playing. Maybe then it's worth playing. We don't have contests of that size. You can find perfectly fine stacks and lineups to play that don't have 5-man of the worst of a 2.5 total team that have almost no shot at being the winning lineup. Yes, every once in a while that team will come in. Once every God knows how many. If you simulated it out, one every 10,000 slates, who knows? But it may be the best leverage from a proportionals perspective, right? 0.3 versus 0.1. Does that mean that you play them? No. And there may be a team, let's say, that has a 15% chance of being in the winning lineup. That's going to be owned at 18%. Oh my God, that's negative. Oh, it's negative. Oh, I can't play that team. The chances of it being in the winning lineup are actually less than what they're going to be owned. You still could play that team. They have a 15% chance versus, let's take a look at the 3% owned team, right? The team that's 3% and only owned at 2.7% versus the team that's 15% chance to win and owned at 18%. Well, the team with the negative leverage, has a 5-time more likely chance of being in the winning lineup. but they're going to be owned a little bit over-owned. Yeah, but they're still the highest probability team. So it's perfectly fine to play that team because they're a high probability team. You just know that because they're going to be a little over-owned, that the 2 pitchers and the other 3 batters in your lineup, get your leverage there, right? So get your leverage there. So now you're going to probably have to play a contrarian SP2. Or you're not going to play the chalky Juan Soto one-off or whatever it is on the day in that lineup. Because you need to find leverage because you're playing the high probability thing, but the likelihood, but so are so many other people in the contest. You're going to need something to differentiate yourself, to catapult yourself above all the people that are playing the stack of that team. Now, when you're playing the 3% probability team, that's only going to be owned at 2.7%. Well, you got your leverage. You already have your leverage there. So now in that lineup, you could play the 2 chalk pitchers. You could play the chalk Juan Soto one-off in that lineup. And then you look at both of those lineups together. So you have the lineup with the 15% chance team and the 3% chance team, different lineups. The one with the chalky stack, high probability stack, has a slightly different pitcher, has a different SP2, and not a chalky one-off. This lineup that has that's 3% probability team has the chalky SP2 and the chalky one-off. If we ran a simulation 10,000 times, 100,000 times on the EV of both lineups, it's possible they both are equal. Or conceptually, the type of lineup may find that the expected value of both lineups are equal to each other. Then you say, well, which one should I play? Well, then it doesn't matter. This is what I mean by looking at lineups independent of one another. So one person can play this lineup. You could play the contrarian stack, chalk pitchers, whatever, and you could play the other one that has the stack that's negative leverage. But no, you found the leverage in the rest of your lineup, and now those levers, you move those levers, right? One lineup has levers this way, and the other lineup has different levers this way, but they all kind of balance out equal to one another. Both lineups, it could turn out that both lineups have the same exact projection, right? Because what you're giving up at starting pitcher in one lineup, you're gaining with the hitter in another lineup, right? So they may end up with the same projection. And then you look, the ownership may be the same also because you're getting all the leverage in one lineup with your stack, and the other lineup, you're getting all your leverage by not playing the SP2 and the chalk one-off. So like the ownership may even be the same. So you look at that and you go, these 2 lineups have the same EV. So that's how you have to think of DFS. So you can't just look at, oh, I'm just going to look at a piece of information. Oh, I'm going to just sort by this column and just play that. Whatever. I mean, there are thousands upon thousands of lineups that have marginal differences in expected value. Thousands. Thousands upon thousands upon thousands upon thousands. That you'd have to play, that the difference between these 5,000 lineups, you'd have to probably play out the slate 10 million times to see a difference of. So your goal is to play lineups that have higher than your opponents. That's it. And then play as long as you can. So you could choose, one person could choose that example we had with the 2 different things. They could choose one, you could choose one, someone else could choose the other. And in DFS, what ends up happening with average players, they'll look at, one person will look at the other person's lineup and go, you're stupid for doing that. And the other person will look at the other guy's lineup and say, you're stupid for oh, I can't believe you played the chalk stack, you're a donkey. And the other guy will go, I can't believe you played the chalk pitchers, you donkey. No, the lineups are equal to it. The lineups are equal to each other. It's possible that they're so close in expected value to each other that what's the difference between them? You can play both of those lineups if you want. And then you could find another lineup with a stack from some other team and some other combination of stuff between projection, correlation, and leverage that is equal to those 2 lineups, or close enough, or marginally close, close enough. And you can find a 4th lineup, and a 5th lineup, and a 6th lineup, and an 8th lineup, and a 150th lineup. And you're playing 100, he's playing these 150 lineups that are marginally about the same. There you go. Well, which one should I play if I'm only playing 3? Well, just close your eyes and choose. I mean, mathematically, your goal is to make them as high as possible and as many of them as you can. There you go. Jacob Calloway says, Blender, I appreciate you really improving my DFS play. I've been 3 times so far this year. Oh, that's nice. Now, if you could stop teaching everyone else, I'd really appreciate it. But most people don't understand it. That's why I do this. If you've been watching this show since January, the reboot of this show. So I did it a little bit last year, but then COVID hit and everything. I know everything goes awry. I've been doing the show every Monday through Friday, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock Eastern. Of course, it gets preempted sometimes by Grinders Live or whatever. You could listen. You could start from with NBA in January. If you watch the show often enough, I'm saying it's like it's a broken record. Saying the same thing most of the time. Going through YouTube chat. Feel free to for Casual Friday. Keep on. If you have anything last, I know I scroll back, so I'm like answering stuff from like 20 minutes ago. So I'm looking through. Michael Dompier makes a very good point. I've started playing the $1 mini max on DK so I can experiment with leverage. Completely agree that while Slate IQ is great, it's impossible to predict ownership with that precision. Right. So if you're going to go by the that leverage column that shows the proportion difference between chances of winning and owned, that's like an average ownership. It's like if some of those players are off, like 2.7% could end up being 3.2%, could end up being 2.5%. And the difference of that 0.3 in that proportion percentage could be dramatic. That's why to say if something's going to be 0.3% winning chance and 0.1% owned, like that's a 200% proportion. Like that in and of itself doesn't mean anything. Right? You bump that down to 0.2 and now it's 100%. You do it to 0.28 and now it's 20%. I mean, like, you can't just sort by that column. Let's see. Going through Robert Hunterbrinker. Can you give some advice on adjusting projected ownership based on the size and type of tournament? I primarily play the $3 3 max tourneys and noticed ownerships are typically pretty far off from the pwn in lineup HQ. Yeah, you have to understand that smaller field contests, the ownership will be more condensed. People are going to play more chalky. Okay. So if you're playing any single entry of 3 max, what you should be doing is either mentally or physically. Now, the thing that you could do, obviously, if you have the skills, is to just simulate that contest, right? And get the ownership, basically generate the ownership yourself. But if you can't do that, just mentally like bump up, like whatever the starting pitchers are, they're going to be chalkier. If it says, if our projected ownership on RG is for the large field contests, is for whatever the main GPP is on DraftKings or FanDuel, that's what it's for. So if we like yesterday, like we could even show, like I'll even show you right here. Go a little long today. I don't care. Right? Make Devin work, not have a break between shows. No, we'll be done soon. So let me go to results DB. You could see this. You could see this every day. You go to this ownership tab. Okay. So when you go the bat flip, so that's the main GPP, right? And then we go to the 121 battery, right? Isn't that the single entry? Let's go to the single entry. What is it? 40K battery? Is that what it is? Okay. 40K battery. Okay, this is single entry. Is there a 3 max that I could throw in? Does it say 3 max? 3 entry max. 35K warning track. Is that good? Let's go by that. Okay. So we could see here, take a look at the pitchers, for instance. This is for yesterday. Let me put the bat flip at the back end. Okay. So we could see here that Lance Lynn and Yu Darvish were more owned in the 3 max and the single entry than they were in the bat flip. So 64, 57. This is like 70, 78, 76, 72, right? Tyler Anderson was much more less owned in single entry. Let's get rid of the 3 max. Make it easier to look at. So here's the ownership differences on the pitchers. Let's do all the batters. Okay, so look, the chalk is chalkier. Yelich was 33.7% owned in single entry, 21% owned in large field. Kettle Marte, Colton Wong, basically the Milwaukee and Arizona and even the Royals were look how significantly more owned. Look at the pitchers, significantly more owned in single entry. So if you're going by like 21%, don't know, he's going to be way higher. So the chalk gets chalkier, but that also means that the contrarian stuff is even more contrarian. Take a look down here. If you played like the Mariners, for instance, right? Because I liked the Mariners yesterday. Kyle Seager. In the bat flip, in the large field GPP, he was 11% owned. Only 4.9 in the single entry. Take a look at Crawford. Actually, he was a sharper play. So yeah, he was a one-off in single entry. He was a cash play. Let's look at Ty France. Look, half is owned in single entry. Well, he has to be because all the higher projected plays, the Milwaukee guys, the Arizona guys, the Kansas City guys, are even more owned. So if they're more owned, that ownership has to come out of somewhere. So that's what you should be thinking of when you look at the percent owned. If you're playing single entry stuff and 3 max stuff and smaller field stuff, you have to bump up. You know, today the Coors, Oakland, right, and Coors and Blake Snell and Scherzer, they're going to be more owned in single entry. So you could, Oakland is only 18. Could it be? Oakland may be a 12% aggregate owned, average owned in large field. They may be 18 to 20% in single entry. And at that point, maybe you shouldn't be playing them at all at single entry. Then you look at a team that is going to be 5% owned in large field. They may end up being 2% owned in single entry. Maybe take a shot on them. That's all you have to do for ownership for the smaller field stuff. Understand the higher projected players and lineups are going to be more owned because people don't need as much leverage, right? So people tend to, I'm not going to play the top stack, but I'll play the third highest stack. So like all of them get high owned. Let's see. Anything else? Devin's answering questions in the chat. Eric Johnson says, casual Friday pants optional. I don't have pants on. I got pajamas on. I got pajamas. I don't go anywhere. I can have some pajamas on. Pajamas, apple juice, right? I'm like a 6-year-old, right? Yeehaw. So 15-game slate tonight. Big slate. We got MLB Grinders live. I believe it's we could see here. Who's on? Dean and Grant. It's probably Grant. Probably something like that. Then we've got 1 o'clock Eastern, which is coming up in a little less than an hour here. Showdown strategy show for today's NBA Showdown. 1 o'clock Eastern with Chop, Andy Means. Got Grinders live for MLB at 5:30 Eastern. Crunch time for premium members. 6:30 with Roth and crew. Sign up for RG Premium. RotoGrinders Premium. Get $10 off your first month by clicking on the link in the description. And as always, All the stuff that I talk about with the projection, the correlation, the leverage, all that type of stuff is in my course. The Theory of Daily Fantasy Sports, how to think like a professional DFS player. This is how you play DFS. This is the mathematics, the game theory of playing daily fantasy sport, no matter what the sport is. You wonder why the top players tend to be good in like every sport? Well, that's why, because it's a game of math. So learn that math in a simple layman's format, 15 hours of structured content. You could probably get nearly everything that's in this course from this show if you start from the beginning and you watch hours upon hours of it. You could if you wanted to. If you wanted an easy reference guide, an easy way to do it, nice little seminar, right? You got game objectives, player selection, expected value, leverage, correlation, construction, risk management, exploits, psychology, all this type of stuff in 15 hours. And people listen to it multiple times. You play, you listen. You play, you listen. You play, you listen. That's how I learned how to play poker. Read tons of books, listened to a bunch of stuff, read forum posts. That's how I learned how to play DFS, right? I learned playing DFS by just watching like literally everything on RotoGrinders. And when I say literally everything on RotoGrinders, that's exactly what I mean. And reading everything. I probably watched hundreds of hours of RotoGrinders shows back in 2015 in sports that I didn't even play, just to understand DFS strategy better. So if you want to dive in, go to theoryofdfs.com and pick it up. People say, yeah, it's well worth it. So we'll go over. We won't go over the slate on Monday, whatever. Monday, well, fine. James is back, right? We didn't have a show on Monday. We had Grinders Live, so James wasn't on. So we'll be back on Monday for Mondays with McCool. Talk more about DFS strategy, answering your questions on YouTube. Hit the thumbs up button on your way out the door. It's getting pretty warm. I opened this like 3 hours ago. Maybe that's why. So hit the thumbs up button. Hit the notification bell to know when we go live. Because I'm usually live, mostly live. Mondays through Fridays, 11 o'clock Eastern, for the DFS pregame show on RotoGrinders.com.